I'm going to call the meeting to order and remind our board that we are live streaming. And so please, if you would, state your name as you're speaking so that folks online can hear and know who's speaking. And then also the state requires us to conduct all votes by roll call. Just making sure we're keeping in line with those virtual meetings. Alana Keegan will be calling the roll.
Thank you, Chair. So as a reminder, we'll go. Everyone, we want to know who everyone that is here. So for our actual votes, it's 1 vote per community, but for roll call, let me know. I'll say the community, and you can say here both the delegate and alternate. Aberdeen.
Will Mulaney, Aberdeen.
Thank you. Anger.
Rob Smith here.
Thank you, Mayor. Apex.
Brett Gant, Apex here.
Archer Lodge. Edson.
Gary Medlin here.
Broadway.
Thomas Bill, Broadway.
Cameron. Harborough. Carthage. Perry. Chapel Hill. Chatham County. Clayton.
Jason Thompson here.
City of Durham.
Deidreana Freeman here.
Durham County. Waverina. Garner.
Tim Martin here.
Goldston. Hillsborough.
Kathleen Ferguson, Hillsborough, present.
Thank you. Holly Springs.
Holly Springs, Tim Forrest here.
Johnson County. Henley. Nightdale. Lee County.
We can Bill Carver here.
Thank you. Micro.
Katie Garcia, Micro, here.
No. Moore County. Morrisville.
Steve Rao, present.
Thank you. Orange County. Pine Level. Pinehurst.
Pinehurst, Chef Morgan here.
Thank you. Pittsburgh.
Pamela Baldwin, Town of Pittsburgh, present.
And John Bonnet, alternate, Town of Pittsburgh, present.
Thank you very much. Princeton.
Don Rains, Town of Princeton, present.
City of Raleigh. Robbins. Rollsville. Sanford.
Rebecca Salmon, City of Sanford, here.
Selma.
Byron McAllister here.
Dollar City. Smithfield. Southern Pines. Bass. Wake County.
Susan Evans, Wake County, present.
Wake Forest.
Chad Siri, Wake Forest, present.
Wendell. Whispering Pine. Wilson's Mills.
David McGowan, Wilson's Mills is present.
Yeah. And Zebulon.
Larry Lauk, Zebulon, present.
Thank you very much.
This is Ronnie Kern, present from Rosehill.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry about that. Is there anyone else that I've missed?
This is Heidi Carter from Durham County. I joined late, but I'm
Thank you
here.
very much. All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you. And with the quorum, I just want to make sure we do a review of the agenda, and if there are any items that folks wish to change, now would be the time to let me know. And if not, we'll move forward.
This is Pamela Baldwin, and I would like to change, not exactly change, but make an adjustment on the minutes. Is this the time to do that? Because the minutes doesn't reflect that I was at the April 20th, 2023 meeting.
April 20th,
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
April 20th, just making sure.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so correction to April 20th.
All right. Thank you.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
just note, the nomination committee, we are still trying to coordinate getting together, so we will not have a nomination slate this evening.
I'm gonna ask that the folks on the nominating committee hang on or hang back if you're in person.
Absolutely.
And
That
then
was
we
going to be
try
my
to
next
get a date.
request. Thank you.
Okay, moving to our presentations and recognitions, new employee introductions. I'm going to ask Jenny to introduce.
Thank you, Chair Freeman. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. So this evening, we'd like to introduce Jacqueline Holman to you. She is not necessarily new to the COG. I think she just hit her 6-month mark, but we've been trying to spread out our introduction. You would get a little taste here and there. And with that, I will hand it over to Mary Moore and her supervisor.
Well, good evening. I'm Mary Warren, and she said everything I was going to say. So I'd be happy to hand it over to Jacqueline and let her tell us a little bit about herself.
Hi,
Here she is. She's
my
online.
name is Jacqueline Holman. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. My name is Jacqueline Holman, and I'm the Aging Program Associate for Triangle J. And I started in November, and I just want to let you all know a little bit about myself, my prior experience. I was a dialysis technician with DaVita, where I provided hemodialysis care to patients, as well as educating them on infection control. I also assisted on the admin side with preparing the building for the state audit as well, and traveled to different centers, assisting with water checks, making sure that the water, the city water was safe enough for the patients. In Florida, I was working at WellCare Health Plans, where my main focus was to assist senior citizens who were experiencing suicide ideation. And we also received inbound calls from Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries who were seeking social service resources. And when it comes to Fairfax Imaging, I was a forms designer, where I developed form templates for automatic recognition. So that's basically if you fill out like your tax documents, I would be the person that would create a template so that the system would be able to read like your handwriting, which would negate a human from having to type all of your information. And I also assisted with mentoring new forms designer as well. And what I'll be working on here, and what I have been working on here at Triangle J, is providing administrative support to AAA staff, as well as the ombudsman. I've been creating newsletters as well, and assisting with taking minutes. In my spare time, I love spending time with my baby. She's a Shih Tzu. She's my only child. I love visiting different libraries as well as taking time out to laugh with my friends. And yes, we do schedule Zoom meetings just to focus on laughter because we feel that laughter is medicine to the body. And I love to eat, so trying different carrot cakes is something that I like to do. And I love coloring as well. My dream vacation would be to Chicago or New York, basically anywhere where I can relax, check out bookstores, take my dog to a dog spa, or go to dog-friendly clothing stores and be able to sightsee. We spend a lot of mother-daughter time together. And I like going to church, snacking, stretching, working out, and binge watching shows on Netflix. And some interesting facts about myself. I was born at 24 weeks old. I used to read and write in Japanese with one of my friends. And I like researching hospital safety grades as well. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jackie. It's been great to have you on the team.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate the sharing of the hospital safety grade website.
You're welcome.
Pleasure to meet you. I'm glad you're here with us.
Thank you.
And
Nice to meet everyone.
Going to our RTI update on the workforce survey.
Yep.
And that's going to be on.
I'll provide just a quick introduction before we've got some guests joining us tonight to really discuss this this item on your agenda. So a little bit of context. It's probably not surprising to all of you that your staff has been talking with us for quite some time about workforce challenges, both on the recruitment and retention side. And so we, in, I believe this summer of 2022, partnered with RTI to conduct a survey of all of our workforce across our local government. So this specifically, and Mike will get into the weeds of this, but specifically focus on surveying sort of the management level of your organizations to get a sense from them about what they see as the biggest challenges facing them around workforce. And Mike's going to talk through the survey. We haven't actually had a chance for him to come and present to all of you, even though this has been done for a little bit of time, but we've been trying to get it on the agenda for some time. But this has also been used by a number of your staff already. So I would encourage you to make sure that your staff know about the results of this survey and are using it as they think through budgeting and HR decisions. We've actually had a number of them reach out to get some of the specifics so that they can use it in their own conversation. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike and Pearl, who are here with us from RTI, to talk about the survey.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for allowing us to come and join you at this evening's meeting. I apologize that the date, I don't know why the date says February 9th, but it's just been one of those days. I also want to thank my colleague Pearl, who's with us here tonight, and my colleague Sarah, who is dealing with a million other things over at the office. But we are with RTI. We are a independent research institute. We are one of the original founding members of Research Triangle Park, founded in 1958. So we are having our 65th anniversary this year. And you know, we've come a long way from being a little building in the trees in what was Research Triangle Park in the 1950s. I was telling someone earlier today, we are a very large organization with a presence all across the US and all around the world, but this is home. The Research Triangle region is our home. And any time that we get a chance to take the work that we're doing and have an impact here in the region, I am kind of always trying to find opportunities like that. So again, thank y'all for welcoming us today. Thank TJ Cog for supporting us through this work. And I want to spend about 10-15 minutes talking about what we learned from the survey. Some of you have seen this before, some of you have not. And then hand it back to Elena to kind of talk about the steps that TJ Cog is taking on some of its workforce work. So the reason that we did this is because there's some data that was coming out, particularly in 2020, about a very high rate of stress and burnout and very high rates of vacancy in public sector and local government positions. All of you in this room are probably very familiar with this and see this on your day-to-day. They cited that there was really serious emotional labor working with constituents, accelerated pressure during the pandemic in 2020, and a real greater sense of being overworked and overwhelmed from some of women of color, workers of color, and LGBTQ employees had some of the highest sense of being overworked, feeling a sense of burnout, feeling a sense of kind of high levels of public distrust in local government employees. And that was driving quite a bit of burnout. And so I saw this headline about a month ago. Where are we now? Across North Carolina, across state government agencies, about 23% of jobs are currently vacant. Before the pandemic, that number was about 12%. So we're seeing about a quarter of North Carolina state government jobs vacant, and the turnover rate near 17%. And just quotes from folks who are saying, I do almost 4 jobs. So this continues to be a persistent issue. And I say that and I bring this up because we did this survey back in September and October of last year, but I think that the data still remains pretty relevant, really pertinent. So when we were looking at kind of the questions from the USC survey from 2020, we wanted to know what's the state of the public sector workforce in the Triangle right now, and what are those factors that are affecting well-being. So we sent it across the region in September and October. We got about a 32% response rate. And for those who do surveys often, a 32% response rate is pretty high, which told us this is a pretty serious issue. We got representation across the entire TJ Cog region and across many different departments. Again, keeping in mind, and this is coming from a research institute, this was a voluntary survey. It represents kind of a point in time. It's not meant to apply to other places or other contexts. And we'll note that the responses come from managers, supervisors, and HR professionals. This was a very intentional thing we did because we did not ask people about their own personal mental health, their own personal well-being, because then we get into the territory of kind of protected medical information, and we needed to make sure that we were getting good data, but not overstepping our bounds. And so there's a little bit of limitation to the data in that it tells you what managers and supervisors are seeing. But from what we saw, we think that still shows, many of the challenges around what the public sector workforce is facing. And so as I said, just for the representativeness of the sample, we had about 56% male, 39% female, and having over 83% white is just one thing to keep in mind when it comes to the representativeness of the sample of the survey. So getting into some of the responses, I think that we asked people about some things that they said about the current state of the workforce and how they felt about those things and whether they agreed or not. And some of these at the top, we had a pretty high level of managers and supervisors saying they agreed that staff were comfortable taking time off. They were taking advantage of benefits. They felt valued by the organization. But then towards the bottom, I think the bottom 3, there was a real big gap, and there was a much lower level of trust or of agreement in saying our staff feel valued by the community, our staff are valued by the elected officials, and our compensation and benefits are competitive with the comparable private sector and non-government positions. So just about half agreed with that, compared to over 80% agreeing that staff were taking their leave, they were taking advantage of their benefits. When we asked in the last 2 years how things had changed, there was a real strong sense of kind of these top 3, that it was very difficult to recruit workers into the public sector. Over 87% agreed with that. That staff have had to take on other responsibilities, and staff have had to work overtime or beyond their regular work hours. So again, over 80% 70% were in strong agreement or in agreement or strong agreement that staff were working beyond their usual responsibilities. But we also noted that only 28% said they had to scale back services due to a lack of staff. So there's a recognition that staff are working really hard and they're keeping that same level of service that they had before. When we ask what employees are citing as the reason that they leave or they consider leaving your organization, wages is at the top. That's 64%. We also see recruitment from the private sector, lack of opportunities for growth, and stress and burnout as real drivers of why people are leaving local government organizations. When it comes to recruiting and retaining a skilled workforce, over 70% again got back to that wages question. 59% were saying that it was a lack of skilled applicants. We also see housing affordability as a real challenge. And then red tape and political or cultural support is a little bit lower. But really kind of the wages, applicants, and cost of living being a real driver and making it difficult to recruit and retain that skilled workforce. So this graph is a little complex, but I want to continue to show it to y'all because we ask about what do you currently offer and what would you like to offer to your staff. So when you see the kind of darker blue bar is what's currently being offered, and then the light blue bar are things that they would like to offer. So we see kind of the biggest gap is in childcare. Only 2% are offering and over 40% would like to offer. But others include student loan assistance, debt forgiveness, financial planning, some fitness-oriented memberships, but really across the board, mental health, flexible leave, mentoring as all things that local government organizations would like to offer and are not all currently offering. So most everyone has some sort of an employee assistance program, healthcare navigator, opportunities for professional development and access to mental health, but there is also a desire to kind of offer more of those benefits. So there's a couple of high-level themes and takeaways that we saw from this that I think are kind of pertinent and through lines throughout the data. Wages are a real driving factor, and I think that at the end of the day, as the survey respondent said, it just comes down to where an employee can make more money. Sometimes, this example of CDLs being able to make a lot more money driving in the private sector, where they see that they can have more competitive wages in an environment where they're talking about housing affordability and cost of living. Wages are still, big driving factor across all of these. Staff are working beyond their normal hours and responsibilities, and this was really interesting to see that juxtaposition between over 80% said that staff are working responsibilities beyond their current role, but 28% have had to cut back on services. So, public staff and the managers are really seeing this. Public sector workers are going the extra mile, and there's an increasing workload. And I think, and we saw in the data a lot of cases where management in their open-ended responses expressed a really deep appreciation for the hard work that the public sector employees were doing to maintain a level of service with fewer staff. There are some concerns that managers are really perceiving their staff are not highly valued by their constituents or their elected officials. 58% of managers said staff are valued by the community, and 55% said that they were valued by elected officials. We asked that question, those were second and third lowest. And so there have been cases that survey respondents cited of a more hostile work environment, more hostile public, email communications after hours, staff and to elected officials from members of the public that are driving a lot of stress and burnout among employees. And then, like I said, targeted presentations to elected officials on the stress, and I think that's why we're in this room here together. We saw that public safety, and we really broke this out uniquely. Law enforcement and fire faces pretty unique challenges. The competition is fierce. There are fewer candidates every year, and it's more competitive and agencies are having to compete more to attract and retain good public safety workforce. The wages and the conditions are really hard to compare and hard to compete with the private sector. police and fire, they work dangerous conditions and flexible hours. And in some cases, departments were operating at staffing levels below their capacity. And so the agencies are recovering from staffing losses. And in some cases, they noted that staffing has rebounded, but they still continue to have some kind of real challenges with recruiting and retaining in the public safety sector. And finally, managers are recognizing the need to invest in the well-being of the workforce. About half cite lack of professional development and stress and burnout as primary reason that employees leave. And so I think that we did see some very optimistic responses as well, that managers have taken the effort to invest in organizational culture and communication and create kind of a stable work environment. We say that there's been a lot of turnover in the public sector. There's also been a lot of turnover in the private sector. So some of the conditions that we're seeing in the labor market in the private sector are also being seen in the public sector. But the data also shows us, some unique characteristics. So for this, and with this, I do want to thank you all for your attention. I know some of you have seen this data before. I will also say that there is more data, and I did not want to bombard you with it this evening, but there is more data and it is available on the TJCOG website that gets into some more detailed breakdowns and all the slides that we shared today. And I'm going to hand it over to Elena to talk about what's happened.
Well,
since
I
then.
can pause and I don't know if anyone has questions. I feel like it's always sort of a downer to present this information, all of you. But if anyone has anything they want to ask about the data.
I was wondering if has there been a similar, or was there a similar type survey done pre-COVID? Do we have any data that would indicate that the COVID experience somehow had an influence on the workforce, and so the same questions might now have a different response than they did otherwise?
We thought about that a lot. There was not comparable data. So this is the first time we're asking these kind of questions. We did ask what changed, and we allowed people to answer that question and get at what changed over the last 2 years. But unfortunately, we don't. And I think that managers have said that it's been more difficult. The last 2 years have made things more difficult, and staff had to take on more responsibilities. So we tried to capture that when we asked how things had changed, but unfortunately, no one had done a survey like this before, so we didn't have kind of a comparable pre and post. It's a good question.
Another one. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. There's kind of a disconnect between professional development and training, which seems to be strong, but then a concern about upward mobility at the same time. So do we need to be less clueless when we're training people or creating opportunities, or what?
That's a great question. I know, so I don't have an exact answer to how you should do that, but I know that we have a group of HR directors from all of your communities that meet monthly. And one thing that has been coming through their conversations a lot more is conversations about things like career ladders that can give folks, even if it's not immediate, a sense of where they're headed in the organization. And so I think things like that actually might be more complementary to training, and is definitely being discussed too by.
I'm wondering also whether or not it's the character of county government that upward mobility sometimes is difficult to achieve. Aren't a lot of turnover maybe in the higher levels and stuff? I don't know if you got any feedback about that. Is it just awkward to find?
It's a great question.
When we asked, one of the discussions that we've had since kind of collecting the data and having these conversations is that we see that in a lot of public sector organizations, the management will say they offer these things. So they say they offer professional development. 86% say they offer professional development. What we didn't ask is how many employees take advantage of that professional development. So that would be, I think, help us to answer your question a little bit more. We know that employers say they offer a lot of these things, but one of the things we didn't ask was how much do your employees take advantage of those things?
Thank you. Appreciate your insight.
would probably add to that and say it's probably pretty hard to take advantage if you're doing 2 other jobs.
Good point.
The respect one makes me kind of sad, and I was wondering, did you do more of a deep dive into some of the either causes or examples of the one from the community and the elected officials?
So we did break those out a little bit by division and department. And we found that I've got there's a little bit more detailed data on the data that's available on the website that gets breaking them down by department. And I think that helps to illuminate a little bit. So for example, folks who work in planning had sensed a very strong level of distrust from the public because of going to public meetings. And so there was a lot of variety across. So that was, it was interesting. I think when I looked at it, that planning sense that they had the public had the worst perception of planning.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna.
That's one example.
Yeah, and when we presented some of this to one of the managers groups and discussed the planning item, it was actually the managers group, city and county managers. Everyone was just nodding their head when we said planning. They said, that sounds exactly right. We thought it would be law enforcement, at least on my end, we thought it'd be law enforcement, and that had the lowest.
Generally law enforcement, public safety
had high perception.
Had very high perception of the public's, or of how the kind of the interactions with the public were generally very positive.
Thanks.
Did you see signs of where you had options of hybrid workplace where people were working mostly from home, that you saw signs of depression or loneliness or wanting to be with their colleagues, or, I mean, particularly during the COVID experience?
Yeah, that was a hard one. And we, unfortunately, we had to be very careful about the kind of questions we asked, because if we didn't want to ask individual sort of personal mental health questions, because we get into the realm of kind of personal health information. So unfortunately, we did not, we didn't capture that.
I have a couple questions, if I may.
If you could just hold on online, if we could finish in the room, because that might be easier for having this going back and forth. I think we have one more.
Two more questions from the room.
2 more.
Mayor Bob Smith, manager. I also have served in the Attorney General's office for 17 years and have noticed and also represented the HR department at one time or another. One of the strangest things recently is if you have 4 candidates, you notify them and ask them to show up at different times. Some just don't show up. And it's really hard. You may have lost another good candidate because you chose one that didn't show up. And it's been a lot of flux in terms of being able to keep the integrity of the evaluations going on.
Thanks. Jennifer Robinson from Cary. I really appreciate the report. I think it's really fascinating. And there's some elements in here that are just very difficult to tackle. For example, pay, or making sure that you have a skilled pool of people to pull from. Those are very hard. I found it really intriguing that you had the sentiment about the elected officials, because that's a really easy one for us to address. And I wonder if those findings, if it'd be good for the COG to share that with the North Carolina League of Municipalities and the School of Government, who do training of elected officials, and talk about those best practices of respect. I've had the privilege of serving on my council for 23 years, and I've seen it mature over time. You know, things that you don't do, like call your staff on a Saturday night, or text them and ask them to take care of something on a Saturday night, or, you know, dress them down in a council meeting when you don't agree with something they said, you know, little things like that. But these best practices ought to be somehow documented and passed on when we educate our newly elected officials. And I think we could move that number pretty easily. That one. Now, the public one, it's harder, but I think also just having elected officials defend their staff to their public, you know, is also important.
True, very true. I think that gets at what Lee and Elena are gonna talk about in a minute too. I think we had an online question as well. Or two, several.
Yeah, this is Kathleen. I had a few things. One, I really do appreciate this. The league did a very in-depth, similar presentation. It was, in fact, it was like I want to say an hour and a half, 2-hour session on this. And some of the data you're showing, I would love to compare against what was at City Vision. So I know those presentations are going to be posted at some point or available, but I think that would be useful just to take the information here and the information there, and look where it coincides, if there's any outliers, good place to ask questions. But
Go ahead, Kathleen.
But I have a few questions because I have seen this kind of data across several industries in the private sector, and I'm really curious about a few things, because some things it's the devil's in the underlying assumptions and details. And so, in a couple industries I've seen, the salaried folks are, depending on the different positions, their overtime is running 60 to 85 hours, in a single week. I don't know what that means when I see overtime in the public sector. What does that mean? Does that mean 1 hour over, 100 hours over? And that order of magnitude matters. And where's, where are those, where's the median? What's the mean? So some of that I'm kind of curious about. And then in terms of turnover, I was actually surprised to see that it's as low as it is. I know in a lot of areas it's a heck of a lot higher, that churn, depending on those positions in the private sector. And I would love to see some comparisons, and that's harder to find. I realize that, but I'd love to see a comparison, because some of the public-private differences, the turnover, the attrition, similar burnout complaints, but the underlying reasons, where's it similar, where's it different? Because some of the solutions, I think it's not necessarily, pay is, that is a real thing. The differential in health insurance and retirement benefits and time off is also a real thing. So what I'm really curious about, getting under the hood and seeing, more, a little bit more deeper dive into this before we make decisions on it.
Yeah, that's great.
You know that the full kind of more detailed, there's more detail on the data that's presented on the TJCOG website, as well as all of this. So if you want to look at some of these numbers in comparison to other studies, these numbers are available on TJCOG's website.
I'm not finding it. Can you just tell me what
It should be,
subgroup it's under?
it should be one of the sliders on the main page.
We've got our website manager right next to
I don't know what that means. Across the top or down the side?
If you go to.
One other thing I would just add, Kathleen, so on the league's efforts, I know that I believe they worked with Alicia DeHart Davis, if anyone knows her, she's at the School of Government. And so we've also seen that data, which is also useful. And I believe they were more broadly surveying. It was not just managers, and it was more focused. It's complementary, but it was more focused on sort of what are you doing right now, not sort of perceptions of how your workforce is struggling. So we've definitely pulled from that as well, because they did some really good data collection across the state. So if you haven't seen the league survey, that was in partnership with the School of Government.
Lena, there is one more question online.
Hi, this is Heidi. I was just going to ask a question about the child care. I was surprised to see that childcare listed with such a low data point. I think it was 5% of the 5% of managers listed childcare as an issue for their employees. I feel like this day and time we hear so much about how difficult it is to access quality childcare and how expensive it is. And so I was just really surprised by that and wondered if you had any quick thoughts.
I was surprised by that too. I wish I had, I wish I could say, that we had more detail, but I was very surprised by how low this was. Because we did conduct a large private sector survey last year in Western North Carolina that I think the number was like 60%. Lack of childcare being a primary obstacle to recruiting and retaining the skilled workforce. So that was a really big difference. And I wish I had a better answer for why this number was so low.
Just to briefly add on to that, you go to the next slide. I also was surprised by how low it was, but I think this gap is also very interesting of only 5% said it was an issue, but it's one of the biggest gaps in terms of what they provide and, what they would like to provide. Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, this at the bottom of this slide, 40% would like to offer it, which is sort of this additional indication that they would like to, that they know it's an issue. The other thing I'll add, because Mike probably can't extrapolate like this, and I'll extrapolate, is that I think for a lot of our managers right now, wages are just so top of mind that it is always going to be the thing they're focusing on, those sort of hard numbers, because I know all of our local governments are sort of putting money out, hoping that that will address some of the issues. And not that it doesn't address it, but I think it just sort of pushes other things that they actually probably are having more issue with and they're thinking about farther down. Because you can see at the top, the wages sort of continue to be what they focus on.
Speaking of wages, was there any way to gauge in this new environment where employees will apply for a job at a new agency? And of course, ask for what your pay is, and then go back to their current employer and seemingly negotiate for at least the current employer then will make a counter offer that is competitive or more so than the higher offer that you made. We experienced that a few times, or at least recently anyway, where we thought the person said, I'm ready to change jobs. I'd like to go to work for you. They went back and talked to their employer, and 4 or 5 days later, they said, well, I changed my mind. And the other.
We see that between local governments.
Right.
And, I mean, forget the private sector. Everyone's sort of is hopping between one another. So, yeah.
Commonplace. Yeah.
Any other questions on that? I am only going to take a minute because I encourage everyone. We'll share the link to the website page. And we also have a lot going on. So I'm not going to talk a ton about all of it tonight, but I encourage you and your staff to just stay engaged. As I mentioned at the beginning, several of your HR departments asked us for the breakdown of this data so they could use it in their budget conversations. So you are welcome to use it as you see fit. So I wanted to quickly just sort of provide a high level, I think I have 2 slides, so bear with me on this. What we've sort of launched partially as a result of the survey and sort of at the same time as the survey. We're calling it our Public Workforce Initiative. And the 4 goals that we have on this slide are they're the result of both this survey and also focus groups we did with your city and county managers and HR directors. And so these are the 4 areas that we're focusing efforts on, with the recognition that we can't necessarily address individual organizational challenges. And so these are the areas we felt we could have an impact collectively. The first one was well-being and reduce burnout. We sort of launched that with our summit last year, which was focused on mental health. And we've been having a number of workshops that are open to staff and local elected officials and anyone else that would like to attend that are focused on employee belonging and improving sort of workplaces for your employees and reducing stress. A lot of your HR directors have been attending those. And that's been a series over the past couple of months. The second goal is improved equity and pay resources. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with pay and classification studies. And there is a lot of time being spent on those right now. And it's often through our organization, we partner with our COG to the West PTRC to conduct those for many of you. And we are convinced that we can find a better way for you to do it that takes less money and less time, because there's a lot of money and time being spent on them. And the market is moving faster than pay and classification studies can keep up with. And so we've talked about this with some of your staff, and we actually have a couple local governments who have shifted. I'll give Carrie a little bit of credit. We heard recently from your HR director that for some things, they're sort of just moving with the market to make sure that they can, keep up with it, and using data that they already have collected and maintained. And so we are doing a ton of research on sort of a pay and class consortium and how that might look for the region, where it could all be in one place in a little bit more real time, so you're not doing that over and over again. Better data on trends and workforce needs. We would love to expand on everyone's questions that you had for Mike and the RTI team. We're just seeking money to fund it. So we're in the process of looking at, there's a number of grants out there related to workforce and other sort of, similar related topics that we could do a much bigger survey and dive into some of these topics and reach more. We really focus in the survey with RTI on manager level, and we'd like to delve into lower levels of the workforce as well. And then coordinating and improving the pipeline. So to the point of everyone stealing from one another, we are hoping to find some ways to make it easier for us all to just build up the pool of candidates. We've had several meetings. Beth is at the end of the table with me, with sort of a new group that we're trying to convene around recruitment marketing and rethinking how we're addressing recruitment. And there's a lot of momentum around that. That was actually requested by a local government. It didn't come from us. It came from someone else who wanted us to get together on that. So there's many more things happening in this topic, but these are just a couple highlights. So I only had one slide, but I'm happy to connect anyone with the information. There's lots going on, and make sure your staff are involved as well. So.
Thank you. And moving ourselves on to celebrating the Older Americans Act. The acting area to present.
May I just make one more comment from the peanut gallery here? This is John Bonnet in Pittsburgh, and I couldn't help but observe or think the very striking results on the planning staffs. I think the language is something along the lines of esteem in the community, respect in the community. And I think it begs the question, what has been the recent influence of state legislative changes on local government's ability to plan their own development, and how that has constrained local governments and also perhaps inflamed communities. No need to respond. Wanted to say that.
We appreciate the comment. Just repeating what you were saying, it was a little muffled, that the planning staff concern may come from a lot of the constraints that have been put on local communities. That's really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mary.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm Mary Warren, the Director of the Area Agency on Aging at Triangle J, and I'm going to introduce quickly the topic of the Older Americans Month. And I know we're running a little bit behind on time, so I'll try to keep it brief.
We're okay. We're okay. We need all the time for this.
Okay, well, apparently some folks want to get educated about how to age. You don't need to worry yet.
I want to get there one day.
So the month of May every year has been designated as Older Americans Act Month at the federal level, and then in turn, our governor typically will also make a designation. And for 2023, the Older Americans Month is The theme is Aging Unbound. And so this actually represents sort of the diversity of aging as well as combating stereotypes about aging. Being flexible in our thinking and recognizing that there are a lot of positives about aging. And so this is hopefully a little bit uplifting after some of the down news about workforce development, that you can look forward to retirement and aging. We're also this particular year celebrating 50 years of area agencies on aging, and the area agencies on aging were established in 1973 by the Older Americans Act. And so they were planning and coordinating bodies that were set up across the country to coordinate aging services. And I just want to add, in North Carolina, we're trailing a little bit behind that. We were actually established in 1974. Triangle J Area Agency on Aging was one of, I think, 9 that were originally established in the state, with others to join later. So I guess that means we get to celebrate from May of this year to May of next year. Sounds fine to me. The ways to think about aging in a positive light, particularly around activity and physical capability. It's seen often as a decline or a period of loss, but there are many older adults that are very physically active. One of the things I wanted to highlight is our senior games program in North Carolina. This is a statewide program run by a nonprofit, but all of our local rec centers and senior centers coordinate these activities where folks can participate still in sports they may have had for a lifetime, or they can learn and excel in new sports, and they compete and advance up to the state level, which is really nice to see people being able to push their limits still as they're older. There's a lot of other activities associated with the senior games, such as silver arts. There's opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies, a lot of fun for family and friends. And by the way, all of these pictures are from our region. They are not stock photos. So you can see up in the upper left, the Chatham County opening games ceremonies with the cheerleaders, as well as, you know, folks doing things outside of senior centers. I mean, we have a lot of great activities in senior centers, Tai Chi and aerobics and whatever, but, you know, hiking and outdoor activities. And that, I think that's actually maybe the Okanichi Trail there that group is on. We also have a lot of engagement opportunities, and people are able to be active and engaged for, you know, many, many years. Obviously, you've got your sassy ladies down in the bottom corner. Everybody enjoys, you know, those uplifting people that have a lot of, you know, vigor and whatever. But then we have up in the upper left, you can see even our older folks who have to be in care settings, maybe. That's particularly, that one is the Adult Day Center in Orange County. They may need a little extra help to be engaged, but they can still be out and active. And then there are many people like Barbara, who's playing the guitar there and entertaining, who are also still working. She's actually employed in one of our provider agencies in Johnston County, still engaged in that way. We encourage lots of civic engagement opportunities. I have to mention services. That's a large part of what we do. There are folks who need a little extra help to be active and engaged and able to live the life that they want to live. Everything from our creative ways to supplement food, like the grocery shopping experience, to our more traditional services, like home delivered meals there. You can see the volunteers, and even things like ramps to help people be able to go out and do things. Because without a ramp, if you can't mobilize, your home becomes really like a prison. And so those are very important ways that we keep people engaged. I have to mention creativity. We've got lots of opportunities for individuals to remain creative throughout their lifetime. I mentioned the Silver Arts Competition. You can see some really well done art projects there. But things like music and dance, and particularly music is very important because it speaks to everybody, all cognitive ability levels, all cultures and so forth. People respond to music. We have drama and storytelling activities. And I hope when you see that picture, that gentleman in the lower right-hand corner, you think, what is that great story he's telling? I'd like to be there, instead of how old is he? You know, lots of creativity amongst our older adults. And what we're really trying to do is show aging in a positive light, that there's a lot of opportunities for joy and happiness and positivity. It doesn't have to be a negative. As you can see, our folks love any reason to celebrate or have a party or dress up. You know, every holiday gets celebrated. Folks like to connect with each other and have fun. And so I want to conclude and say this is really why we celebrate Older Americans Month. It is this particular lady that introduced you. She is Emily. She works at the Moore County Department of Aging, and her sign says, "I believe older adults are spectacular." And I agree with her, actually. So I'm going to turn it back to our chair to introduce the proclamation.
Thank you. Thank you. So the proclamation reads, Older Americans Month, May 2023. Whereas all communities within the Triangle J Council of Governments, Carolina Pines, includes a growing number of older Americans who contribute their time, wisdom, and experience to our community. And whereas all of our communities benefit when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds have the opportunity to participate and live independently. And whereas Triangle J's Council of Government recognizes the need to create communities that offer services and support to older adults with their need to make choices about how they age. And whereas the Triangle J Council of Government Communities can work to build an even better community for all older residents by not limiting thinking about aging, exploring and combating stereotypes, emphasizing the many positive aspects of aging, inspiring older adults to push past traditional boundaries, and embracing their community's diversity. Now, therefore, the Triangle J Council of Government Board of Delegates does hereby proclaim May 2023 to be the Older Americans Month and urge every community to celebrate their older citizens and residents to help create an inclusive society and accept the challenges of flexible thinking around aging. Duly and proudly adopted this the 24th day of May 2023 while in regular session.
Place that on the consent agenda. Now we place on your consent agenda for adoption.
Yeah.
It didn't even mention pickleball anywhere.
Later. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you bringing that forward. And we're turning to Lee on staffing announcements.
Well, so nothing like Older Americans Month to talk a little bit about some really important and significant staffing changes at the Area Agency on Aging. And it's with mixed emotions that, I think you probably have seen the news release that AAA Director, Ms. Warren, has announced her retirement. She'll still be with the organization for a few months, but at the end of July, she's gonna take on some new challenges and
Gonna be unbound, yeah.
So it's been a real pleasure. Mary was, I think, the first appointment I made director level when I got to the COG as director, and it was really an easy promotion for me because she had lots of experience and lots of respect, and
was just a natural choice, and she has exceeded every expectation that I've had, that the region has had. She is not only extremely knowledgeable with the multitude of compliance issues that the area agency and aging has to deal with federal money and state money, and dealing with the state and all their changes. And I don't know how she does it, but she does a fabulous job. But then she also does a fabulous job leading a staff of really talented individuals and providing great service to the community and to our local governments and partners. And so it is very much a well-deserved retirement. We're not done celebrating her. This was the last full board meeting before she retires, so we wanted to give the opportunity to recognize her here. But we'll Mary said not to have too much fuss, but sorry, we're gonna fuss a little bit. And, you'll be getting more information about how we'll honor Mary. So thank you for all you've done, Mary. Appreciate it very much.
Been an honor. Thank you.
Mary is chairman of the COG during COVID. Your presentations that you were making of how your staff was working with nursing homes and assisted living and homebound people is just amazing. How you were providing services with all the challenges you had. You did a great job.
Thank you. I had a lot of great people working. Everybody was pulling in the same direction.
If I might could just say, I had the privilege of chairing the agency committee for about a year. But even though I was the chair, Mary was the one who thank you for your encouragement and the opportunity to work with you.
So we have another employee or staff member, team member of the Area Agency on Aging who's joining us by Zoom this evening. Unfortunately, he was not able to get to the meeting tonight. Many of you know Ellison Jones, who is our family caregiver specialist. And Ellison has also announced that he is retiring after 22 years of service to this organization. And so Ellison's last day will also be at the end of July. A news release about Ellison's retirement went out today, so you may not have seen it yet. But I know Ellison's on with us. Ellison is just a joy to work with. I think staff will echo this when I say he is always somebody who's positive, always somebody who has a really cool adventure that he's been on that he gets to talk to us about at a staff meeting. Always encouraging, but also willing to sort of change, to challenge the status quo and to question, so why exactly are we doing this? Or there's some different ways of doing it. And he cares deeply about individuals that are caring for folks that they love or that they are working for, that are older adults or have other needs and they're homebound or they have certain restrictions at home. And so that's what Ellison's about, is supporting those who support others. And we're really sad to see Ellison go, but happy for him and his future. And I see him up there in the top left over there. So Ellison's waving. So Ellison, and again, this is the last board meeting before Ellison retires. So we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize his service. So yeah.
Thank you, Lee.
So would you like to say, sir?
I just want to say thank you, and that I have worked with a dedicated team. I'm not anything that I've achieved has been with my colleagues, and so I recommend them to your attention and support.
Thank you. All right, one more. So obviously we have a vacancy coming up in the AAA director. And so you know, obviously with the vacancy, you've got to think about what you're going to do in terms of filling that. And I'm really proud that I didn't have to think really at all, which is good for me. I didn't have to think. But I'm very, very excited to announce that Ms. Janisha Hennigan will become our next AAA director. Janisha is our assistant director. She's done a wonderful job. She's well respected in the AAA and in the organization and across the region. And so it was a very, very easy decision to approach Janisha and to see if she was willing to take on this new opportunity. And we had a great conversation, and I am so thankful that she said yes. So Janisha, congratulations. We announced that the staff is. There'll be a news release that'll go out later, actually tomorrow morning announcing her appointment. So Janisha is here with us tonight, sitting next to Mary, and Janisha, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And, congratulations.
Well, thank you. First, I'm thankful and honored. Just like Ellison and Mary echoed, I've definitely had the honor to work with a marvelous team of people and actually great mentorship over the past couple of years, especially during the influx of COVID that threw a monkey wrench into everything. So I'm thankful and honored for the mentorship. I'm thankful for the COG. So for the opportunity. I'm a little different by trade as far as my background. So it was in healthcare prior to doing the change as a therapist working with older adults. But I saw the need greater working in long-term care facilities, and I'm just decided to just pursue my career elsewhere. And I'm glad I landed as an intern at the Area Agency on Aging. And I don't think things happen by chance. I think things are just ordered the way they're supposed to go, and so I'm thankful for the opportunity.
We're excited. Yeah. So she's going to do a great job. All right, so those were all the staffing announcements I have with the area agency. That is all. So
thank you. I appreciate that. And I do want to echo the support for Mary and for Ellison. And I hope to one day get to that retirement and aging, and then also welcoming Denisha, or congratulating Denisha and Denisha Hennigan. Yeah. Hennigan. And I know you'll do well. We're moving to our business. I know we're a little behind, but I do think we'll catch up in the next two sections. So bear with us. The business section, so the interlocal agreement between the city of Durham and TJCOG. Lee, I think you're presenting this back.
So before you is an interlocal agreement that we request the board consider as part of your consent agenda. Just real quickly, as a reminder, we're really excited to be welcoming 11 staff members that are currently working with the city of Durham that are really part of the Durham Chapel Hill Carborough Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. The MPO governing board, their policy board, has decided to move the planning agency responsibilities from the city to Triangle J. We've been working very closely with the city on the transition, and obviously the transition of the great staff members is of utmost importance, wanting to make sure that the staff have a very seamless transition from the city to the COG. We've already worked with them on their open enrollment for benefits that will begin on July 1st. We have already included them in staff meetings, and now this interlocal has been negotiated between the COG and the city, and both attorneys for both the COG and the city of Durham have signed off on this. This is just basically formalizing transition items between the COG and the city of Durham. So I would recommend approval. A similar an identical ILA, I think was before the city's agenda on the 15th of May. And so it's advancing through the city of Durham.
Great, thank you. And turning to Alina.
Thank you. I took a bite.
Quick,
Quick to
let
my
me just read the
Your
section for you, the branding and charter update.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Just a quick update. We have hit 17 of 32 charter adoptions. We've heard from over 32, which is the number that we need, that they plan to have it on their agenda.
Actually, 18.
Oh, 18,
Yep.
thank you. So just a reminder, if you haven't put it on your agenda, to do so, and we'll be in touch as we get closer to the big 32.
I will say that John just heard it.
It's on ours next year.
And now we did discuss the nominated committee exact. So we'll move to the recognition honoring the life of David Sieberling, the town of Cameron. And Lee, did you want to present first?
Would you like me to read the proclamation?
Sure. Let's think of the proclamation.
So just quickly, again, as many of you know, we announced at the last board meeting that Mr. Seiberling, who was the delegate from Cameron, had passed away. And we had actually just found out that afternoon that he had passed. So we promised that we would have a proclamation of sympathy and honor of his life and his outstanding service. And so that is before you, and the chair will read that.
Thank you. So it's proclamation of sympathy and remembrance of and honor of David Williams Sieberling. Whereas the death of David Williams Sieberling on March 12th, 2023 leaves us with a deep feeling of sorrow for the loss of such an honored and respected man. And whereas David was born in Barberton, Ohio on August 16th, 1944. And whereas David is survived by his wife of 46 years, Linda Sieberling of Cameron, North Carolina, son Ellis Sieberling, and Yvonne Holden of New Orleans, Louisiana, and brother Charles Sieberling of Barberton, Ohio. And whereas David served his country for the 348th Army Band and performed the platters for the Four Tops and Fat City. And whereas David served the citizens of the town of Cameron, North Carolina as a council member and served on the Triangle J Council of Government Board of Delegates. And whereas David obtained his master's degree in music education from Appalachian State University. And whereas David served as the band director at both Union Pines and North Stokes High Schools, as well as teaching music at UNC Pembroke and Sand Hills Community Colleges. Now therefore be it resolved that the Triangle J Board of Delegates hereby extends to the members of his family and the community this expression of sincere regret for his loss and hope that they will be consoled by the memories of his fine life and many achievements. Duly adopted this, the 24th day of May, 2023, while in regular session. So we'll move that in our consent agenda as well. Have that signed and sent out to the family. And our next item is to adopt the consent agenda. I'm sorry. Resolution adopting 2023-2024 budget. Please.
Thank you. This is the last business item before you consider consent agenda. So you have before you this evening the budget resolution for fiscal year 2023-2024 for Triangle J Council of Governments. Just a quick recap of how we got here. We presented a budget to the local governments and to you as a board on April the 15th, as required by the charter. In that budget, The recommendation was to increase member dues by 2 cents. As a reminder, member dues have not been increased in well over 20 years. So the member dues increase would be going from 39 cents per capita to 41 cents per capita. Additionally, there was a recommendation to increase the population cap for when dues are decreased. We're the only cog that I'm aware of where dues actually go down as population goes up. It has been at 150,000 when dues change from 39 cents to 20 cents. That cap would go to 200,000. So it would affect a few of our local governments. The budget is balanced as required by state statute. It does add a number of new positions, primarily with the transfer of the Durham Chapel Hill Harbor of MPOs into Triangle J. That's the majority of the positions that are added. There's a couple other positions, mainly to right size and align our administrative functions, finance, and some other things to be ready for the increasing number of staff members that we have. Just as way of context, we're going to be close to 60 full-time employees. 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we were at 23. And so we've grown a lot. We've been really lean. And so we're talking about doing 3 or 4 jobs. A lot of our staff are taking a lot on. So we're trying to right size some of that stuff. Couple of notes about the budget. The area agency on aging numbers are never settled by this time. So those numbers will likely be back to the board either in the executive committee in June or the board in August with budget amendments, because we never get the state numbers. We just got them, I think, a day ago. We haven't verified that, so we need to change that. There's some other changes that we know are going to be coming as we've been trying to balance. But this budget is balanced, and we'll bring those amendments to you again in June, July. So I want to thank Hope Talley. Hope's our Chief Finance Officer. Hope, has been with us close to a year now, getting close to a year. She comes to us. She was the Chief Finance Officer for Chatham County. She's been fabulous. I would say it's been a learning experience with COG budgeting. Yes, it's very different than local government budgeting. I warned her, and it's just you change one thing and it throws everything out of balance. So you have to rebalance everything. So it was an adventure. She's doing a great job. She's assembling a superb staff. So thank you for all. So happy to take any questions. Certainly would recommend your consideration.
If there are no questions, move on to our consent agenda. And on our consent agenda tonight, we have approval of the agenda, our draft minutes, and with the addition of Pamela, we would approve the minutes for April 20th, 2023. I did note that Susan is actually in there. She is on there. We didn't see her on the top. And resolution adopted 2023-2024 budget. The interlocal agreement for City of Durham and TJ Cog. And then resolution transition leading planning agency responsibilities to TJ Cog. Nominated committee assignments has been removed. Proclamations honoring Older American Month. And recognition of the life of David Sibley, Town of Cameron. And I'll take a motion to approve. Thank you, Don Raines.
No, Ken Marsh.
I'm sorry, Ken Marsh and Town of Garner. And I think I heard Kathleen
Yes, ma'am. Kathleen.
Ferguson from Hillsborough. And I will ask Alina to lead us to the roll call.
Yes. So as a reminder, it's only one vote per community, and if both delegate and alternate are present, delegate should vote. Aberdeen.
Will Mullaney votes aye.
Anna Vanger,
Aye.
Apex. Called in, but.
Yeah.
He left. He said he's calling. Benson,
Jerry Medlin, yes.
thank you. Broadway,
Thomas Beal of Broadway, aye.
thank you. Cameron, Scarborough, Carthage, Carrie,
Jennifer Robinson, yes.
Chapel Hill, Chatham County, Clayton,
Jason Thompson, yes.
City of Durham,
Deidre Freeman, yes.
Durham County,
Heidi Carter, yes.
Fuquay Varina, Garner,
Ken Marshman, aye.
Goldston, Hillsborough,
Kathleen Ferguson, Hillsborough, I.
Holly Springs,
Tim Forrest, Holly Springs, aye.
Johnson County, Henley, Nightdale, Lee County,
Bill Carter, aye.
Micro,
Katie Garcia, aye.
Moore County, Morrisville,
Aye. Steve.
Orange County, Pine Level, Pinehurst,
Pinehurst, Jeff Morgan, aye.
Pittsburgh,
Pamela Baldwin, Town of Pittsboro, aye.
Princeton,
Don Raines, Town of Princeton, aye.
Raleigh, Robbins, Rollsville,
Ronnie Kern, aye.
Sanford,
Rebecca Salmon, aye.
Selma,
Byron McAllister, aye.
Tyler City, Smithfield,
Andy Moore, aye.
Southern Pines, Bass, Wake County,
Susan Evans, aye.
Wake Forest,
Chad Siri, aye.
Wendell, Whispering Pines, Wilson's Mills,
David McGowan, Wilson's Mills, aye.
and Zebulon.
Larry Lauk, Zebulon, aye.
Thank you very much. We have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. And moving from our consent agenda to our executive director.
So I think most items that I would have reported on were sort of discussed during the agenda. I do have, I think, 3 quick items. One, I wanted to make sure that we recognize Ms. Katie Garcia, who is with the town of Micro, but she is newly appointed as the delegate for Triangle J. She said that she needed to join virtually, but she hoped to maybe join in person next time. So it's good to see you, Ms. Garcia. Thank you for joining us. So the other 2 things that I had is a quick update on building renovation. Of course, we're here in Apex. Thank you. Councilmember Gant had to leave. I don't know if he was able to join. Got to see the town manager for a minute, but Apex graciously offered us this room to meet for the next few months for our meetings until the part of our renovation is completed. So we have moved into our temporary space, been there for a few weeks, and
They are working on the space. You can hear it. You can see it. So you walk into our old suite and it is gutted. There are hardly any walls left. The large meeting room, all the meeting rooms are torn down. Most of the offices are torn down except some of the ones that line the windows. So you can start seeing the new office taking shape. They started removing that sort of common area where you would come in the first set of doors before you went through the second set of double doors. So you will not be able to really tell that it was two suites. It'll really join and flow. They got permits. Thank you to the city of Durham. They got permits a day or so ago, and they are scheduled to start construction toward the end of this week or very beginning of next week. It is a quick construction timeline. They are hoping to turn the space back over to us on August the 1st. That backside, and then we will move. It'll probably be September before we're fully settled, because that would be furniture and IT. And then they'll start on that front suite that we're in right now to make our new 100-person conference room in the boardroom. So we're really excited. Things are really starting to now take shape. We're doing some fun stuff right now, like going through old maps that we're hoping the new space really honors the region and all the interesting things that the COG's been involved in, but also how the region has changed and grown. It's really just, I'm biased, I grew up here, it's the best place to live in the US, but we're finding maps from city of Raleigh and Wake County urban land maps from 1963 that were hand drawn. A map of the B. Everett Jordan Dam in Lake when it was created in the 70s, right? And a RDU airport map. And so we're going to be framing that stuff and putting it up in the offices. And so we're finding some really cool stuff. So that's been fun. So more to come. We're going to have a nice little celebration when we get in the new space. So last thing real quick. Thank you to Ms. Kimberly Moffett, who's been supporting us and as interim clerk as we've been transitioning that. She's also supporting Micro in the interim clerk. She works for the Mid-Carolina COG, but I think she works more with us right now than Mid-Carolina. So she's helping us. She's been in Micro. She's been helping several other local communities or clerk needs. So thank you for stepping in. Appreciate it. But I'm also happy to announce that Ms. Beth Davis, who's right now our communications coordinator, she is going to also be taking on the clerk to board duties in the next couple months. And I think it's a really good marriage because Beth is responsible for getting communications out to you and to others, maintaining those lists, thinking about our branding. And I think the clerk merges really nicely with that. I think she's excited about it. She acted like she was not excited about it. So she's here to begin work, and Kimberly's not going anywhere. She's going to be helping that transition. So we're excited about that. So that's all I have.
Madam Chair, Bob Smith, the mayor of Town of Angier. I'd like to thank Lee Worsley and his team for his great assistance in helping us to replace our town manager. Elizabeth from the western part of the state is coming to join us. And, thank you so much for the COG's efforts and for Lee's team.
Thank you.
Thank you. As we move forward to the chair's report, I'll keep it very brief. I echo everything that Lee Worsley said, the director, and I'll add to it. I made a note to welcome Ms. Katie Garcia. My apologies from Micro, but I didn't do it at the beginning, and I did want to make sure that I did say welcome. If this is your first meeting, I'm not usually this bad at it. So.
No worries. Thank you so much for the introduction, Lee.
I will just add that I did want to thank staff. I do know that based on that survey, it made me take stock, and I do want to make sure that we're all very thankful. Letting you all know, we're thankful for what you're doing. We know you're covering 2 or 3 jobs and taking on multiple, shifts and turns and everything else. So I do want to say thank you for what you do. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month, along with Older Americans Month and other things. And so just making sure folks are taking stock. I don't want anyone to get burnt out. And so hint, hint, wink, wink, hopefully got a plan for his vacation. Because there's a lot happening. And so just making sure I note that as well. That's all I have. And moving forward, we're going around the region. If folks want to share, those pressing things, I'll start off with, I want to invite you all to Durham. Actually, June the 3rd, I'm gonna miss part of it. I'm really crying on the inside. Apparently, KRS-One is coming for our Bimbe Festival, which is pretty much the Black Culture festival that we hold. It's about 51 years old now. So 51 years, started by Baba Chuck, and we've just been continuing it on. So come out and explore and share and what's going on in Durham. Leaving the floor open, I will not call on anyone. You will popcorn it.
Well, I wanted, on behalf of Johnston County, I want to thank Lee Worsley for leading our meetings with the county commissioners and the mayors to discuss putting together a water and sewer authority. It may take a while for it to work in that progression, but we've had 2 great meetings, and we look forward to putting this puzzle together. So all the municipalities and county commissioners, I think, are excited it's been in the meeting.
And I'll add to that. Yeah, we 2 meetings so far. We've got, I think, a meeting coming up on June 14th. So expect to get it all figured out then, right, Lee? We are excited though, and you really have been a rock star in Johnston County right now, helping out. So we appreciate you.
It's a team effort. It's fun to be part of the conversation. This region's, there's a lot going on in this region. It's just exciting to be part of it.
And I want to add, thank you for all you're doing for micro, because I think that's just a fabulous, and Nancy Medlin and Renee working with our staff in Princeton. We can see the cog at work. That's right.
If there are no other updates.
I'll mention one quick thing. I was involved in the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Advocacy Days. And there's an awful lot going on with the LME MCO situation, which affects obviously a lot of the counties. And it just might be worth your while to take a look at, see what kind of things they're trying to do. One kind of exclamation point is reducing the number of the LME MCOs and make them more centralized. I'm not sure what your opinion might be of that. I'm not sure how you might feel about that, but it has a tendency to centralize services and take them away from the patient. So you have to kind of be comfortable with the idea that they're taking away more control from counties. But it might be something you might be interested in talking to your legislative delegation about. Yeah, feel strongly about it. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm not on the county side, but I will make sure I talk to my county counterparts. Encourage them as well.
There's also a proposition to remove the ETJ from towns and cities.
I just saw that today. I got just a couple of updates. Our town of Morrisville's got a new high school, and the name is going to become Morrisville High. So we just found out yesterday, so that's exciting. It's going to be a WIC Tech. So usually the WIC Tech Community College is very gracious in providing this land. So that'll be coming in 2027. We're opening up a new phase 3 of our Morrisville Community Park with pickleball and tennis. And our IT team won the National Smart Cities Award for 2 projects, our mobile app and Connected Corridors Initiative. So really excited about that.
Pickleball thing has been taken off.
Yeah.
Might have something to do with the professionalizing.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're about to put 8 courts in Selma, so yeah. Yeah.
Words too.
Still LeBron James. team.
Yes, he does. Heavily funded team as well.
So what time to play now?
Oh.
No, I'm so mad that he lost. I'm like, the Lakers can't lose 4 in a row. I'm just not happy. I'm a Lakers.
And we're turning our attention online, just making sure we're not missing any great updates from you guys on there.
Well, this is Kathleen. I've got a couple. One, last Friday's Hillsborough, this Friday, which is exciting. Music, lots of vendors, arts and all over town. The courthouse at the West End, up and down King and Churton. And Uproar, which is the public art festivals, 60 public art installations throughout Orange County is happening beginning in July. And Dawn, we didn't talk about our legislative day for the COG Forum. So do you want me to, or do you want to?
Sure. Go forward.
Okay. So anyhow, we did last week, the COG regional directors and then the elected leaders forum met with leadership and local delegations. We had hosted a reception also on the COG priorities, and the priorities that we were focusing on, the aligning of the prosperity zones with the COGs, really playing up the COG work on helping municipalities with the ARPA funds. And one of the things we learned is that North Carolina is leading the nation in compliance, and that is directly attributable to the COG work. And that is kudos to Lee and the team, because Triangle J is taking a lead on that. So that was a big deal. Of course, we were discussing water and sewer and those kinds of things also. But it was very well attended. We are known, we're respected, and every year it just gets better and better.
We're also requesting funding, 3.5 million to assist, the COGS will assist local governments in financing for local municipalities and county governments in case they do need assistance, make sure they're in compliance with their audits.
Yeah, there's actually just real quickly, I think that's House Bill 799,
I think that's right.
So, 3.5 million recurring to place 2 individuals in each of the 16 COGs with finance background to help those local governments that need financial assistance, and really pleased that the idea is supported by the league, by the Association of County Commissioners, and by the Local Government Commission. We've really all got to work together on, there's over 120 local governments on the unit assistance list right now with the Local Government Commission. And it's a growing, concerning trend. So I think COGS are well positioned to help, and very thankful that our partners. Thank you. Thank you to Ms. Ferguson and Mr. Raines for helping carry that message to Jones.
Thank you. I would agree. I know that all the opioid dollars and ARPA dollars and COVID dollars, like there's just a lot of dollars. And if you didn't have a system in place, it's a bad time to try to figure it out by yourself.
Yep.
It would be helpful to have that support. And you said House Bill 799.
799. Sorry, speaking of that, Ms. Hadley and Ms. Keegan are actually going to be presenting to, I think, a lot of our local governments have asked us to present to them, and actually many of our larger local governments on ARPA monitoring tools, which it appears we may be one of the only entities that have developed a really robust set of tools for monitoring. This first time we're
Yeah,
hearing
that's all.
So, so anyways, we're just really trying to do what we can to support our local governments. There's just a ton of money and everybody is stretched. And whatever we can do to help provide information, so you don't have to do it 47 times, right, is really important, so. Yeah.
I have something that I wanted to just say. This is Wilma from Aberdeen. Yesterday, we had our Tri-Cities meeting, Aberdeen, Pinehurst, and Southern Pines. And from the COG, Lindsay Whitson came down, and Alex Holloway. And I just wanted to just compliment Lindsay and him. They ran a very good meeting. We talked about solid waste presentation and discussed that. And when I saw that title, I didn't think that it would be a great discussion, but it turned out to be a very good discussion and everybody participated. And I do want to say I appreciate, I think the two of them did a very good job, and I just wanted to compliment them.
Great, thank you. Anyone else online? If not, I'm gonna call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. And we are adjourned. At 49.
Except for the nominating committee.
Actually, remember